You are now listening to the Serious Growth Podcast with your host, Leo Costa Jr.
Hey, welcome back, Serious Growthers. Here we are again. That's a good thing. Seriously, for me, man. Shit. 67. I guess I'm just more aware of the fact that life is fickle. And I didn't know that. Or I wasn't aware of that when I was in my 40s. Which I guess is a good thing. Every day means a little bit more to me than it used to. So that's not all bad. But anyway, welcome. I want to talk about how you can stay in the game for a long time. And I'm just talking about the game of working out and nutrition. That's it. That's all we care about. How do you stay in the game? Well, obviously you have to have more than motivation, because motivation wears out. It goes away. And then you have to rely on your discipline. I think that's important. And we've talked about that before. And I think you have to have a love for this stuff. You know, it's even though that obviously if you want to make ongoing progress, you need to take yourself to task every time you go in. I'm not talking about anything that we haven't talked about before, but it needs to be talked about every single time, just about, because people forget. And so you have to do things to stay in the game, taking yourself to task, training like somebody who is on a mission. Obviously that's important. And you have to just keep adjusting, because obviously we're not the same as we were when we were 20. And in some ways, it's a really good thing, to be quite honest with you. We're not the same when we're 30 or 40. And I'm that guy that's kind of talking to you from now. You're not the same when you're 60, or in my case, 67, pushing 70, baby. But you know what? Surprisingly to me, it doesn't really matter, honestly. I was telling one of my clients this morning that I said, I'm having some of the best workouts in my career. And I've had some really good ones, but I'm having some really good workouts. And on top of that, the results are coming like I would have never thought that possibly could happen. I didn't know. Shit. I was looking at other 67-year-olds. I mean, there's a few people out there like Robbie Robinsons of the world. I'll always talk about Robbie because that guy's amazing and he's an inspiration. But man, when you go through it yourself and then you realize that, hey, I can still be competitive. I mean, it doesn't mean that I have to put on a pair of Speedos and go up there and on stage. Shit, I don't want to do that anymore. But I do want to be competitive. I'm still bodybuilding, man. And for me, that's cool. It's amazing. I just don't compete anymore that way. I compete against myself. That's all that really matters, is that we compete against ourselves. But you have to keep, if you want to stay in the game and if you want to be productive and competitive against yourself, you have to realize that, and I'm not telling you again something you haven't heard before, that change is a constant. One of our clients, I got on the phone with him and he just said, I've been trying to put on size and I don't like the way I look at some point. And then I go ahead and I reverse that course and I take some body fat off, and I don't necessarily like the way I look at that particular moment either. Well, guess what? That's kind of like what this whole thing is about, especially when you're trying to, be aesthetically pleasing, top to bottom. That's just hard to do.
All right, let's take a quick break so I can tell you about our product.
Do you want a bone-crushing grip? Good, because you're gonna get one with the amazing new TRS gripper. It's a progressive grip builder with longer handles and a special ergonomic design that's like a dozen hand grippers in one. Start off easy and work your way up to quickly build your grip strength from wet noodle to pulverizing. The package includes a video from the world-famous strength coach, Dr. Russ Horine, the man who worked with Leo Costa to help bring you big beyond belief in the Bulgarian Power Burst. Dr. Horine shows you a simple and easy to follow workout plan that takes just minutes a day right from in front of your TV set if you want. So click on the link below and let's get started building you a stronger, firmer, bone-crushing grip.
And it takes a lot of damn time. And your look that you end up getting is always temporary. Even like when you've gotten to the place where, like myself, I mean, I never hardly ever liked the way I look, never. And part of me was, I'm glad that I was that way, because it just meant that I was just never happy and that I wanted to do better. Okay. At some point you have to pat yourself on the back and give yourself a little kudo to carry on. But you're never happy with how you look, and everything is temporary. Even when you're like in your best shape, you just keep finding things that are just, there's flaws. Not that anyone necessarily anybody else would see them, but you do. And that's all that matters, really. But you gotta give yourself a break every once in a while. But at the same time, you have to be enthusiastic about learning more about how your body reacts to diet and exercise. Keep that in mind, guys and gals. It's ongoing. There's no finish line. And if you think there is, well, once you get to that finish line, you better find another hobby, something else that you want to get into, because there's no finish line. I don't want there to be a finish line. Shit. I run away from the finish line. I want hard stuff to do. I need a challenge. So let's talk about a couple things that I think, or I know, will keep you in the game. I'm all about being natural these days, so I live in that world now. And when I was coming up as a natural athlete, it was always an uneven playing field. So what? Life is an uneven playing field. You just got to figure out how to keep, making adjustments to get where you want to get. So I guess the moral of that is just don't use excuses. Okay. So anyway, so I keep looking for things that are natural products that really work. And I'll tell you something, maybe you guys and gals have heard of peptide therapy or peptides. And just to make sure that we rule out any confusion, peptide is not a SARM. For those of you who think that, you're not being natural. No, actually peptides are natural. It's kind of a SARM is more like a steroid in the way that what it does to your body to produce unnaturally the amounts of the hormone. The peptide is a natural way. It signals your receptor sites. Let's just tell you what it does. So it signals your receptor sites. You can take the peptides in an injection. That's what I do. It's an insulin. It's like for those people that have high blood sugar or whatever, diabetic, they take that insulin needles. So it's very small. You can also take it in a tablet form. You got to be careful, like the places that you buy this stuff from, because like everywhere else, there are places out there that are not reputable. So be careful with that. But peptides are just amino acids, basically, that are grouped together in such a way. But in a nutshell, the peptides, what they do is they signal your receptor sites. They give a stronger signal. So if you're trying to burn body fat, they have peptides that are grouped in such a way that it does that. And it's natural. It creates a bigger signal to the receptor sites. I'm just talking in basically layman terms, but that's what it does. So it's natural. And you can do the same thing for if you want to, your body to produce a little more testosterone. But that's one of the things I think that's the peptides are remarkable. I mean, I've always said that most supplements don't work. There are a few that are out there that work, but most of them don't live up to the hype. But I'll tell you what, peptides in my mind, I think they're really, they're legit. And I think that you'll notice a definite difference if you do that. Educate yourself on peptides, but I can tell you, I've been doing them now for at least a couple of years, maybe more. And, it's been part of the help and the reason why I've gotten myself up. I just weighed myself this morning at coming in at about 230 pounds right now, and body condition is in pretty damn good shape. So peptide therapy, I think that's really some, they've been talked about now for quite some time, but I've never really talked to them on this show. And I just think that one of those things that I think is a good thing to have in your arsenal, along with making sure that you are, as it relates to diet and exercise, that there are three components that must be implemented together in a certain way to get them to create compound results. So for those of you that are not making sure that your resistance training, your cardiovascular conditioning, and your nutrition are dialed in, because that's what I'm talking about. That creates the compound effect. And then all the other stuff that you do with nutrition and supplementation, that just adds to it. I can tell you that most people that I've talked to, they seem to have more of a handle on the training, for example, and even the cardio. I think the big mistake with cardio is that people get their heart rates too high. But I think training, a lot of them have more of a handle on that than they do with nutrition. And you know what? It's just kind of like working weak body parts. It's never fun to work on stuff that you don't have fun working on, and that's the reason why all you have to do is, a lot of times when you look at somebody, you can tell with their training, at least, what body parts they like training. Most of the times the show muscles, it's the arms and chest, pretty much. Who in the hell wants to train back? God bless America, man. That's one of the hardest body parts to train. So my point is this, and it goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning of the show. If you want to stay in the game, then you have to keep being enthusiastic about finding all these things that can help you, maybe just a little bit to the nth degree. But you put a lot of those little things together, and guess what? All of a sudden you have a body that's responding like mine is now at this age. It's phenomenal, man. It's amazing. Okay, another thing to keep yourself in the game is you really gotta work on your mind every single damn day. Because you know what? What happens with a lot of people, especially when the honeymoon is over, with your training, and a lot of times we get like a new workout that we've come up with. Oh shit, it's a honeymoon. We are kicking ass and taking names for about, 3 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever your honeymoon phase is. And all of a sudden it's like, oh damn, it gets back to that work you have to do. It always gets back to that. So what ends up happening is that a lot of times we become emotionally at a stalemate. Think about that. Keep in mind that the way the physiology works, as it relates to making results, whether you're trying to put on muscle, lose body fat, increase endurance, I don't care what it is, you must keep in mind, and a lot of us know this, and it still messes with our mind, is that your body will not respond in a linear fashion at the end of the day. The big picture, we've heard it before, it's a stair-step effect. Putting on muscle, losing body fat. And I'll tell you what, sometimes, especially if you're dealing with a lazy metabolism, or if you're that person who has gotten very lean, bodybuilders who competed know this, because as you're getting leaner, your metabolism it's trying to protect you, but all of a sudden the results are like, it's like war to get some of that body fat off at the very end. So for the people that are out there that think that guys, bodybuilders and gals who have been dieting and competing, when they get to that point where it's like the last 5 pounds, hey, that's just as hard to overcome as it is for somebody who's just starting out, who's got a metabolism that needs to be revamped. And most of us have a metabolism at some point that need to be revamped. But even with all that said, again, as that athlete, it's the same. We all go through the same thing. We get at a stalemate. Our body had just said, I'm not moving, whether you like it or not. It's stubborn. It's really stubborn. So how do you get out of that? Do you change a workout? That's one way. It's not always advised to keep changing workouts, especially too soon, because the shiny object syndrome is a really big and badass syndrome in the industry, and I don't mean that in a good way. That's where people go too soon. They look for that next shiny object, and it's just going to come back to the same old thing. You will end up in a emotional stalemate at some point. All these things are going to continue to happen. Not everybody stays in the game, man. It's a tough deal. So what do you do? Well, here's my thought is this. It's a game that you play with your mind. I call it death ground. And all that really means is that you put yourself on a spot, and that this doesn't just apply to your training and your nutrition. It applies to just life itself, because those, training and stuff that we overcome as an athlete who is bodybuilding, especially, it's the same thing that happens when we're dealing with life. Life is always coming at us. It never stops. Sometimes it's worse than other times, but the thing is, it never stops. And the same thing with your training. This never stops. You're always going to be faced with where you're at a stalemate. So what you have to do is you have to irritate your physiology. You have to irritate your endurance of the muscle. You have to irritate the body when you're putting on muscle weight. And back in the days with serious growth, we always did that. If you remember, if you'll recall, you'll remember when we basically did a hyper-acceleration on the physiology. That's all that was. It was just increasing drastically for a short period of time, and even to the point where it's kind of scary to get your body to get out of that stalemate. It's not an easy thing to do. None of this is. But if you do that on a fairly regular basis, and don't change your training and don't change your nutrition too soon. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but just don't go too soon. Focus on what it is that you can do with your mind to make what you're doing, because it may have very little to do with the way your nutrition is set up or the way that your training is set up. And that's where most of us, we get away from that too much. It's you have to embrace pain, and you have to embrace that time where you're fighting against your body. Don't change too soon, because you're missing out on the real benefits. That's why we talk about when you get into where you hit a plateau. Don't bail too soon. Stay in the plateau. Plateau is a necessary evil. Stay in it. That's what I mean, because that's where all really a lot of your great results happen. It's a sweet spot in your training. It's a sweet spot in your nutrition. And then just keep remembering that, this is, it's never going to change for too long. Everything is temporary. There'll be a spot where your body's going to balk on you when you're trying to put on more muscle, and all of a sudden it's just like it won't do it anymore. At some point, you're going to have to just go into a program that now pulls off body fat. It's very difficult to do that when you're trying to, your focus is on putting on muscle, and all of a sudden it's like, oh damn, now I got to cut body fat. And anybody that's been in this game long enough, that when you're burning body fat, you're not going to just burn pure body fat. That's a mind fuck to a degree, because we don't want that. And yet that is part of it. So if you take all these things into consideration and realize that, it's a war, that's all. You just got to make yourself, you have to change your perception of suffering and pain, and just learn to love it at some way. Just learn to love it. 40 years of being in this thing, I can tell you it's a love. For me, it's a love-hate relationship. But it's just like you have to get to a spot where there is no internal debate. None. Zero. And you'll be surprised when you get into that mode, when you put yourself on death ground where you're up against the wall and there are no other options. You'll be surprised at how creative you can get. Don't underestimate yourself, because we do. We sell ourselves short. Usually. Put yourself up against the wall. Until next time, go develop a daily habit. Overcome the most important thing that you're trying to fix, whether if it's adding muscle, sculpting a little bit more muscle to the body part that you hate training the most. Go after that first. Deal with those things first. The hardest things. That'll start teaching you the warrior mindset. And when you get used to that, and you get used to learning how to embrace the pain every single day, you'll be living the bodybuilding lifestyle. That's what I'm doing. I'm living the bodybuilding lifestyle, and I can't believe how awesome it is. Until next time, go get serious growth.
Thanks for listening to the Serious Growth Podcast. For more episodes like the one you just listened to, subscribe to us on your mobile podcast app and leave us a review. If you'd like to reach out, you can find us online at seriousgrowth.com. Until next time, train smart and train hard.